now time for the Soulful Psalms segment of Beacon of Truth. The Soulful Psalms, where we take one of the Psalms that we hear in every holy sacrifice of the Mass, whether weekday Mass, Sunday Mass, in every Mass we hear the Psalms, the book of sung praises that we also pray in the Divine Office or the Liturgy of the Hours, and we take that Psalm, we connect it to your everyday lived experience. And today we're continuing our walk through Psalm 31. So Psalm 31 is in Book 1 of the Psalms, Psalms 1 through 41. All the Psalms in Book 1 attributed to King David. And the prescript or superscript of this Psalm, which is the first verse, says, Lemenzeach Mizmor HaDavid. Basically, it says, for the choir master, a Psalm of David. So David wrote this psalm, then gave it to the choir master. Now, again, some of these psalms David wrote the music to himself, but a lot of the times he gives the psalm that he wrote to the choir master. So remember, who are these guys? 1 Chronicles 15, 16 to 22. You can see a list of all the superintendents of the musical guild of the Jewish temple. Again, 1 Chronicles 15, 16 to 22, you'll see sons of Korah, you'll see Asaph, you'll see Jeduthun, you'll see Etan, the Ezrahites as well, and the others who are part of that musical guild who put music. Either they wrote the psalms or wrote the music themselves, or they were given the psalm to put music to. So wonderful. And again, we don't know what those sounded like, although there are places on the internet where you can where scholars have given their kind of best guess as to what those hymns, psalm tones may have sounded like. Very fascinating. But we're diving in today at verse 20. So Psalm 31, verse 20. I love David here. He goes, how great is the goodness, Lord, that you keep for those who fear you. Now, again, the word here for fear is yareh. It means honor, reverence, and respect. So the word fear here, yareh means a filial fear, right? The fear that you have for disappointing your parents, for example, that kind of fear. Not being afraid, but having honor, reverence, and respect for someone. So so David is saying here, how great is the goodness, Lord, right? Another place where, how can I repay the Lord for his goodness to me? I think that's Psalm 116. The cup of salvation I will raise, I will call on the name of the Lord. Right? So David here, how great is the goodness, Lord, that you keep for those who fear you. So for those who honor, reverence, and respect God. Now, how do we do that? Simply, first of all, by following his commandments, right? Jesus says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. Right? If you love me, you will keep my commandments. Also by, as Ace and I talked about earlier, becoming the person who God created you to be. Right? So by using your talents, your gifts, however God has manifested those in you, to use them to the best of your ability in order to honor and glorify God. Right? So those are two ways that we can show honor and reverence and respect to the Lord. And keeping the commandments includes not using the Lord's name in vain, right? Like they do on television so often, always cursing the name of the Lord. It almost comes just ubiquitous now. Just like, it doesn't even faze a lot of people because you're so used to hearing that kind of language. But I personally find it highly offensive, and when someone, says that to me in person, or uses that kind of language, like in a conversation, I'll kindly and gently but firmly ask them to please refrain from using the Lord's name in that way. Because again, you've heard me say this before, they don't do it to Buddha or Confucius or Muhammad because they're not God. Why it's so offensive to me is because they're saying it against God. But yet they won't do it for these other religious leaders. And of course, Jesus Christ is far, 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 far more than a religious leader. He is God incarnate. So when you use the Lord's name in vain or as a curse like that, it's an offense against God. So therefore, it's offense against me as a child of God, right? As an adopted son of God. That's also offensive to me. So We are always and everywhere have to honor, reverence, and respect our Lord. So David is saying how great is the goodness for those who fear the Lord, honor, reverence, and respect him, that you show to those who trust you. I love that. So not just those who honor and reverence and respect the Lord, but those who trust the Lord, and not just trust him like a one-on-one. David says here, who those that you show for those who trust you in the sight of the children of men. See, so we have to, when we trust the Lord, yes, we trust him. We go to adoration. We go one-on-one. We surrender ourselves to him. We surrender our wills to him. We surrender our lives to him, yes. But also in the sight of the children of men. Because this culture needs a witness. They need people who are willing to stand up for the beauty and truth of the faith. Just like St. Peter Claver did. Right? In slavery, when so many Catholics turned their back against people coming over on the slave ships from the continent of Africa, or even indigenous people here in the United States, when they were being scorned and rejected, and other Catholics just turned their back and just ignored it, not my problem, that kind of thing. There were people like St. Peter Claver who stood up and gave that witness to the gospel, not just paid lip service to it, but gave witness to the gospel. David is saying here that the goodness of God will be great upon those who are not afraid to trust him publicly. They are not afraid to witness to him publicly. Right? So I'm not saying that he's going to a street corner and start preaching and things. I'm not saying that. But when we're not afraid to stand up, like, again, when someone uses the Lord's name like that, me not being, usually just say, I don't want to talk about that. Or if someone is talking about like a abortion or marriage or something like that, or transgender or something like that, a lot of Catholics, they want to back away. They don't want to say anything. And even though the church is being mocked in that conversation, we're scared. We're filled with fear. We're not filled with trust. We're not filled with confidence. We're embarrassed to share our faith. And guess what? St. Peter Claver was embarrassed too. He associated himself with people who, in the eyes of the culture, seem to be nothing, to have no worth at all. Even the Supreme Court decision, 1857 decision, Dred Scott said that black people were property and not human beings. And St. Peter Claver said, no, I'm identifying myself with the ones that God has called me to serve. The feast day of St. Teresa of Calcutta, who we just celebrated just last week, same thing. She identified with the people that she was called to serve. And that's how God's goodness shines forth in us. We're not afraid to witness to that publicly in the sight, David says, of children of men. He continues, you hide them in the shelter of your presence. Right? I love that. Secure from human scheming. So God will protect us. Yeah, people are going to scheme against us. People are going to plan to ruin us. And some people even do it by trying to ruin someone's reputation falsely. Saying things against the person. And I know that this has happened to certain clerics in the church, where people have an axe to grind against the church, and so they want to do is destroy a person's reputation by making a false accusation or a false claim, right? In order to get back at the church. It says God will protect us, those who are righteous, those who fear the Lord, those who trust the Lord. God will protect us from human scheming. Right. So, God, because the truth will come out. The truth is not just, an ideology. Truth is Jesus Christ, the way, the truth, and the life. Says then he has a synonymous parallelism here. He says you keep them. So he says you hide them in the shelter of your presence, so protection. He says, and then he says you keep them safe within your tent. Right. So within your tent, your abode, your home, right, within our hearts. Right, that God will keep us safe within his own tent from disputing tongues. Right, so the people who are speaking out against us, against our faith, for what we stand for, particularly in this culture today, which is so angry and so vitriolic and so self-centered and self-indulged. We have to speak out against that. We have to witness against that. And one of the ways that we can do that is by following the example of the great St. Peter Claver, who we're celebrating today. So the David is saying that we will receive the goodness of God when we fear him, honor, reverence, and respect him, when we trust him, and we do so in a very public way, that he will protect us and keep us safe within the shelter of his heart and give us an abundance of his divine mercy.
For more on the Psalms with Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, check out Beacon of Truth weekdays at 4 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio and streaming everywhere you listen to podcasts.